Hey there, everybody. Welcome back after another long week of Force of Will to the Teacher's Lounge, your favorite ever live Force of Will podcast featuring a picture of Sue from My Hero Academia and Ryan Miles.
No, that's also a picture of Sue from My Hero Academia.
Brandon Bremont.
Hey.
And Frank Klosser. How you doing, bud?
Me?
Frank Klosser. How you doing, bud?
I have a vacation coming up this weekend. How do you think I'm doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Frank's
cool.
sitting down this week.
Yeah, Frank's actually sitting down this week. Well, that's because he's expecting, so we have to make sure he gets off his feet. Right?
Oh my god!
So you don't want to get.
Where did that even come from?
Blame Brandon. You can blame Brandon for that one. But anyway, before we get into it, thank you guys so much for being here. And as always, thank you so much for your support. If you're interested in supporting the channel and what we do, you can check it out. All the links down below. You can get merch, playmats. You can even click that handy-dandy little join button where you can support the channel. We still have Will coins that we are giving away to members as they come in. Like $5 a month goes to support the channel. And you get access to a bunch of cool emojis. So, and you can name badges and stuff. Ryan is furiously spamming those emojis in the chat. We just added a Prisia emoji, and then Kyron didn't join as a member, and I was disappointed.
Wow.
But tonight we are talking about. We took a week off. We had a spring break, which was very helpful. I got a lot of projects done, and also was sick. So thank you guys.
Two of us moved, apparently,
and two of you moved. So thank you for being understanding of us that transition. But this weekend, we have GP Minneapolis. Yeah. Shaping up to be pretty cool. And because of moving, Ryan and Brandon are both not going to be there, as previously thought they were going to be.
Tragic.
So
now you have a better chance of winning.
Hooray! So now we have Frank. I'm going to be there streaming. Colin from the TCG Scrubs is also going to be there. He has decided to fly out and join me on the commentary table for the weekend, and I'm very excited about that. But our boy Frank, he's going. We haven't talked about the meta.
He's winning.
He's winning. So we are going to take this opportunity to talk about what the meta kind of looks like, what we think the meta looks like up to this point, and how we think it might shift going into this coming format, and then kind of what decks and why, or what kind of text we might be wanting to look at to move into this this weekend. We're also going to talk about a few of the specific spoiler cards that have caused a little bit of contention, or at least a lot of discussion as to whether or not they're good. Specifically, the Master Runes. I want to talk about those a little bit, the ones that we've seen, just to get your guys' opinion.
So
when did
the second half completely broken? Yeah.
When did Nature's Beauty get spoiled? Was it before?
Last week?
It was after last week's Monday, or
yeah, it was after last week's Monday.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then we get to talk about Nature's Beauty for the first time, and also why Force of Will sucks at game design.
So
we'll get to that here in a second.
First off, let's talk about the meta for Minneapolis. So coming into this meta so far, in terms of decks that have topped, we have seen Gil top, we have seen Loki top, we have seen Lucifer, Hanzo, Kirik, Ayu, Tigris, and Brunhilde. Those are all the rulers that have top aided at various different events in various different, amounts and various different forms. So going into this meta, if you guys were to say the rulers to kind of, what would you say are the rulers to beat this weekend?
Gil, Hanzo, Kirik.
Gil, Hanzo, Kirik. Okay, Ryan?
Lucifer, Gil, Kirik.
Lucifer, Gil, Kirik. So Gil and Kirik. Frank?
I have nothing to add to either of those lists. Those are those are pretty much my expected big wigs for the event.
I would say that as much as Gil is a very strong deck, I actually don't think it's a deck that you want to be expecting to take a large portion of the meta. So here's So I say that in the sense of there will be Gils played. There will be skilled players on Gil that you need to be prepared for, but I think, as usual, a lot of Gil players are going to outplay themselves.
Here's the problem, right? I do agree with you. I do think that there, percentage-wise, there will not be a lot of Gils represented, but as you do well in the tournament, or if you expect to do well in the tournament, round 4, round 5, round 6, you're going to play against a Gil. And that
Probably.
Gil is going to be named Aaron Miles, or it's going to be named Will Luger, and he's going to get 9th, or it's going to be named Joey Schilling if he's playing Gil. Like, it's going to be a player that is good at Gil and playing Gil, and you are going to play at least one. Like, I think that's going to happen.
Right. So we're talking about, like, yeah, there's probably going to be sub 5 players that are there, but all of those players are probably going to do well because the Gil deck is really good. Like, we can't ignore the fact that it won 3 back-to-back GPs. I mean, it is very likely the best deck in format right now. And so, like, if you just show up being like, oh, there's not going to be many Gils here, my deck's not, I'll just play a deck that doesn't beat Gil, you're just going to get hosed by it in the last round or in top 8, and then you're not going to win. And it's just like...
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I could agree with that. And playing Gil myself, I was playing for a couple weeks to get ready for the Easter ARG event at my locals that I ended up not being able to go to. But in playing that deck and kind of seeing, especially the new kind of assassin-style version of it, I have yet to drop a match with that deck. That deck in the hands of someone who knows what they're doing is very, very impressive. So definitely something that you're going to want to watch out for. The ones that you're probably going to see more frequently, in my mind, going into this weekend, you're probably going to see a lot of Keurig, and I think you're probably going to see a lot of Lucifer.
Yeah. Which I think is kind of interesting because I think that Keurig just kind of knocks Lucifer's ass around. And like Lucifer has kind of come into the format because like Keurig has been falling away because Brunhilde was popular and Gil was popular. But now that Lucifer is getting back up, it's making Keurig more popular. And I actually think that Brunhilde has a good matchup against both of those decks. So like Brunhilde's like one of the things I kind of have my eye on to be like the deck to play. But it's like it's pretty weak against Hanzo. It's kind of weak against machines, depending on the build. It's great against Gil, which is pretty cool. It's not. It's like medium against Gil. It depends on like the build again, but yeah, it's something I think I would take if I was playing in this event, but I'm also like not 100% confident in that statement, so don't like quote me on it. And don't you dare play a 2-color deck, or I'll come to Minneapolis and slap you with my bare hands myself.
I think Keurig's not a terrible choice for this event either. We saw a lot of Lucifers do well in the States, and people like playing Lucifer around here, and it slaps that around. I'm not convinced. I think you have a good Hanzo matchup too, which is going to be existent. I think Hanzo isn't a terrible choice itself. I actually think Hanzo beats Lucifer, despite what some people have said to the contrary. And in Europe, we've started to see these Hanzo lists that are playing like 3 to 4 Karura main to like just kind of stomp on Gil. I think that there are sequences in which Hanzo beats Gil, which didn't exist before with the new setup that don't play like table flip and stuff. And so when you take this culminated meta together, I think Hanzo is probably the deck that I would play this weekend. And it's a very anti-Gil Hanzo, to be clear.
Yeah,
definitely.
What are you playing this weekend, Frank? If you were going,
I haven't decided yet.
He's playing Brunhilde. Don't lie.
Okay, hold up. But within Brunhilde, I've got 3
ISIS.
different choices. You monster. That's
Yeah.
not even calling a deck. Like I could sleeve up, despite Ryan Miles' objections. I could sleeve up 2 different 2-color Brunhildes and be happy, or mono white Brunhilde and be happy.
There you go.
Good.
Let's be honest. Like I've played the black white Brunhilde. It's a good deck, and it was a good deck when there was just a hard hose in the format. But also, I played green white Brunhilde a fair bunch outside of events, just because I didn't play a ton of events in that format, and that deck was also really good. Like it did a lot of what Hanzo does well, but then was just casually like, oh, by the way, I have a field wipe, and now I've got all of these 1-mana just hard removal for so many things, and I'm just like, I am undecided between those, and then also talking to other players I respect and being like, what would you play? And then juggling all of the things they would suggest, because I'm way up in the air on this one. Like, it's probably be the first event in a while where I sleeve up 3 or 4 decks and just like don't know which one I'm playing till the day of.
And let's keep in mind that none of the 4 of us said machines.
Well, hold on. Well, the reason for that is because we talk about the decks that we expect to see, which is Hanzo, Gil, Lucifer, and Keurig. You beat 2 of those, and you don't beat 2 of those. So it's like
it's definitely a 50-50. Like you're walking into potentially, and having played that deck, I will speak to. Whoa, Brandon's freaking out.
Nope, sorry.
No robots are here.
And having played the deck, because also Ryan, curse you for not coming this weekend because I actually have 2 of your Magic Stones of Chaos. So Ryan lost in top 8, and most of the cards that he played in Minneapolis or in Charlotte were mine. So I was like, well, I'm actually going to get to play in the side event, so hand me the deck. So then I played it, and one, I need to remember to warm up first before I play in any kind of tournament. But 2, that deck actually has some matchups where you just get paired up against it and you go, oh, that was fun. Like, I'm just not going to play, I guess. The game is over. And the problem, I think the problem is with the meta that we're expecting, too many of those decks that just tell the machine deck no are suited to be playable in this format. So I actually probably wouldn't, even if I was, some people are like, oh, what if you actually played Arthur instead of memeing it up like Ryan did? What if you played Hanzo instead of memeing it up like Ryan did? I probably still wouldn't play it, honestly. Just because with what we're expecting to show up, the chances would be too high, in my opinion, that I would sit down against one of my opponents that just is the matchup that I can't win. Especially because the weird thing about Minnesota is not only do they have a ton of Kyriaks that they love, but also they really love IU there. And the machine deck literally goes, oh, IU? That was fun 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and sign the match slip now.
Hold on. There is a way that you beat IU. All right?
Yeah, it's called have Lancelot with 10 counters and hope to dear God they don't have a removal spell.
Even better. This is the Ryan Miles special, all right? If you want to beat IU, if you go to Minneapolis and you want to beat IU, you just have them call a bluestone turns 1, 2, and 3, and then they can't beat you. This is how you win. You just play 1 drop, 1 drop, 1 drop, 1 drop, turn your card sideways. They're like, damn it, I can't resuscitating well. I didn't draw any souls because my opponent's Ryan Miles. What do? I lose. That's how you beat them. If you play against an IU, just do that and you will win.
So change your DNA to Ryan
So alternatively,
Miles'
you
DNA.
can also you can also play Arthur instead of Loki, which is a strictly better ruler. Play 1 drop, flip Arthur, block AU, and then that's enough damage to get through usually.
You can also play. No, wait, never mind. I do think that Hanzo's probably correct for that deck, just so that you actually have a Lucifer matchup. Because I know that when I beat Sam in Minneapolis, he wasn't playing Jet Black Wings, and if he was, it would have been very different for me. I think Keurig is mostly unwinnable. You do have a lot of bounce spells where you can do some stuff, but for the most part, it's just unfavored. But Lucifer can be pretty good for you if you actually have the Sealing Scroll. So I think that's something I would probably look into. But yeah, I don't want to lose to Keurig, and none of you should punish every single Keurig player alive for playing Keurig when they shouldn't. Just play Gil, play Brunhilde, play what else is Keurig? Hanzo, play Hanzo with 4 table flip. Just make sure you don't lose to Keurig, guys. Stay safe out there.
So let's talk about specifically Lucifer. So Lucifer has kind of shown himself to be a little bit, he showed up pretty successfully in Charlotte, and it kind of showed this kind of evolution where it wasn't quite being as aggressive as we were thinking, but they didn't quite shift fully into being a kind of control style. So they were relying a lot more on Astema to close out games. They were still using Genes. They were still using Contract Demon to have these kind of like solid, strong 2-drops. They were still using Ray, that kind of idea. But they almost shifted themselves to being a kind of tempo deck where they were still playing discard, still playing a little bit of removal, but they weren't just like going full tilt aggro with like the. I don't think the ones in Minneapolis or in Charlotte were playing the Maj and Dark Elf, were they? At least as heavily, or they were siding it out or something.
I think they were.
Which ones?
The Maj and Dark Elves.
No, which lists?
The Lucifer lists.
From where?
From Charlotte.
From Charlotte. Okay, yeah, no. Some of them, Sam played the Maj and Dark Elf. The other ones were a lot more control-oriented. I don't think they were playing Maj and Dark Elf at all.
Yeah.
I think that 3 of them topped and 2 of them were Majin. One of them was Belial, right?
Yeah.
No, I think it was the other way around.
I think so.
Because it was Stewart and Holscheiser, and they're both on the same team. And they played the same deck. And I know Sam played Maj and Dark Elf, so.
Go to the handy-dandy TCG Scrubs website.
Uh-huh.
So,
shout out.
So what do you guys think about that idea of Lucifer, like the pivoting now in terms of what the meta we're kind of expecting? If you were to say, I'm going to play Lucifer this weekend, like you're going to play Lucifer regardless of what everything else is, you're going to bring it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you need that for this meta, the more aggressive package is what you need to be bringing, or do you think that the more control-oriented package is what you need to bring?
I think you need to play the aggressive package because that's the only way you're beating Keurig as a black deck is just out aggroing them and then using your 1 mana Sword of the New Moon to be better than their 1 mana Pathway part.
Sure.
That's it. That's how you win.
That sounds reasonable.
A lot of them were
That'd be my
using
thing as well.
A lot of them were using the 3-drop kill a 2-drop spell.
Oh no, the 2-drop kill a 3-drop.
2-drop kill a 3-drop spell.
Scythe of the Reaper. I don't hate it. Definitely
Not
don't
Scythe
hate
of the
it.
Reaper. It's the one that has little.
Embrace the dark.
Embrace the darkness.
I thought the rune was what you're talking about. Don't hate it.
I think you always play that if you're playing the control version. I think that card is actually quite good.
How do we feel about not playing Tears of the Fallen? Is that wild?
So part of me is thinking
Yeah.
that in this meta. So hear me out on this.
I'm
Part of
listening.
me is actively thinking that in this meta, you abandon Tears of the Fallen and you play both Jet Black Wings and Sword of Lament.
I don't even want to play Sword of the Lament. I want to play Scythe of the Reaper, just as like an automatic 2-mana kill spell.
So how's this? Scythe of the Reaper 1-for-1s them. Tears of the Fallen 1-for-1s them and turns on your Contract Demon and Asthma. So it's like, and doesn't get canceled by Fair spell. So I think that Tears is basically better than any other rune except for Jet Black Wings and Black Rosary. Like it's just got to be, right? Just in terms of raw card advantage.
It's good against, yeah, but it's good against the matchups where card advantage matters. But do you actually need it? Because I feel like you just kind of beat Hanzo anyway.
So whatever you replace it with, unless you're saying replace it with Jet Black Wings, which I don't think we're saying because I think we're all playing Jet Black anyway, you're just 1-for-1. Like your Scythe of the Reaper, you're paying 2 to deal with their 3-drop, or you're paying 0
Yeah,
to
that's
deal
why I
with
was saying replace
any
it
other
with Sword
card.
of Lament. So then, like in the because usually, pretty typically, the matchups where Jet Black Wings is good, Sword of Lament is pretty bad. But the matchups where Jet Black Wings is pretty bad, Sword of Lament is like really, really good. So like my
What
thought is
matchup is that?
well,
IU specifically?
I say that specifically
Pen
because
does.
like Minneapolis has been known to carry IU players.
Yeah.
Sure, but like you still, is that good enough to not lose to IU?
It's 3-mana Fog, right? And 3-mana
Right.
Fog might just be good enough when you play Majin Dark Elf on turn 1, right?
It's kind of 3-mana Fog. It's 3-mana Fog that you have to keep up mana for. Like if they just don't pump into 3 open Lucifer mana, right? And if you're just constantly keeping 3 open, you're just going to lose to a 10/10 imperishable ruler, right? I don't know for certain. I haven't played it like ad nauseum.
Stephen
but
Holscheiser from Rogues Guild is in our chat, and he says Lament and Lucifer is also there because you need to kill Keurig sometimes. If you can like match Keurig pace for pace, and they have to flip Keurig, you can use Sword of Lament to kill Keurig.
I'm gonna.
So here's my thing, right? If
doubt
I use swinging into me and they're not just killing me immediately because I'm holding open Sword of the Lament mana, that means they're leaving a tapped IU on the field, and I'm a Jeanne d'Arc deck. Like I'm kind of about that. Is that crazy?
No, that's fair. No, I like.
Yeah, I think
that,
that's fine.
actually.
Yeah,
That's
because
good
I don't
reasoning.
think the IU
I'm not
player,
sure I
you know,
buy
if
the
you're
Keurig
threatening-
reasoning, but I do like that.
If you're threatening the Sword of Lament play, they might not like try to pump into it as much because they're just going to try to hit you 4 times, and you're because you might always be like, well, in response to pumps, now it's dead, and then you've wasted materials. But then at that point, they are risking. Now you're a Joan, like because the other thing is IU herself, without discarding, doesn't have flying, correct?
That's
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
she does. She does. Never mind.
Does she? No, she doesn't. I
IU
think
does
she-
not have flying.
She does not have
Without-
flying.
Not
So, like, even then, you can be like, well, we're moving to blockers. Are you going to try to pump up when I'm threatening 3-will Sword of Lament? Oh, block with the Gene. Like, cool. There's 7 counters on your IU permanently. You know what I mean? Like,
So sword does target though, right? So like Wings of Gold cancels it, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, and Fair spell.
Yep.
Oh, this actually isn't as good as I thought. So you actually has several outs, right?
But they have to have the resuscitating will. So like the God's Art usually goes to that.
Yeah, usually.
I guess if they draw the other one, like they have to draw a 1 of 2 outer. They need resuscitating will and Fair spell or Wings of Gold if they mean it. I actually haven't seen it too much, but it's probably.
I think it's probably mainable, right?
I think that
So-
sounds correct.
One thing I would like to know, because we moved to talking about Sword of Judgment being in there, but on your comment on putting in just a 2-mana kill spell over Tears, sort of getting back to what Brendan was talking about, they both 1-for-1 and they both have a match where they're better. Like the Tears is going to help you a lot versus like the green matchups and stuff, whereas it's going to do less against Keurig. But then the same is true of your kill spell. It's going to do you work against Keurig, but it's going to be of limited value in those other matchups. And by limited value, I mean it's probably not doing anything in those matchups, whereas Tears can still do something to Keurig. Like it involves a little bit of luck because you need to not hit a random battle arts they didn't care about. But
So
Or a high
do-
speed.
I do kind of like Scythe of the Reaper a little bit more than Tears against Keurig, only because you can chase tournament with Scythe if they're doing that.
I agree that it's better against Keurig. What I'm saying is that as its bad matchup, Tears is better versus Keurig than Scythe is against Hanzo or Gil, as that's Scythe's bad matchup.
I think
that's fair.
You're lowering the floor.
Scythe kills Disciples, and Disciples is actually one of the best cards against Lucifer.
Scythe kills Jesus statue randomly.
The fact that it loses to Thayer's spell is pretty bad. I do think you're trying to discard and outvalue Hanzo as the Lucifer deck. And Scythe of the Reaper is completely dead against Gil, but we're also talking about this slot against Sword of Lament, and I think Sword of Lament is so unplayable against so many decks that it's actually just not worth including. I think the control decks were playing it because they actually did have good matchups against both things, but they didn't there are no J Ruler answers that you can play in your main deck, so it makes sense for the control decks to have the Sword of Lament out. They probably don't even need their Rune Deck as much value as an aggro deck would. I'm just thinking yes, they're functionally the same card. Tears of the Fallen is 0 mana for a card out of your hand. So it's a 0 mana for 0 mana trade, 1-for-1 card. Scythe of the Reaper is 2 mana for 2 mana, usually maybe 3 mana for you, maybe 1 mana for you, still a 1-for-1. And I just think that Scythe of the Reaper being able to kill Resonators is just more impactful because of how you can push through combat damage with that. And that's kind of where I'm at. The Divinity 3 versus Divinity 2 is the hard argument, but I actually don't like the Demon Division at all. So I kind of want to rehash the entire Rune Deck for Black, but I don't know what it look like. I don't play Lucifer.
I don't know what your Rune Deck's looking like right now that it had Demonic Division in the first place. So my Lucifer Rune Deck is Black Rosary, Tears of the Fallen, Jet Black Wings, Ruined Earth, and
Power
of Mortality, yeah. And so I think that's the best Rune Deck. Not close. What are we replacing? What's the consideration?
People don't play Ruined Earth; they play Demonic Division instead. But I love the ever-loving hell out of Ruined Earth. So
it's so much better. It's not even close in my head.
So I would actually consider cutting Ruined Earth for Scythe of the Reaper, and then cutting Tears of the Fallen for Sandstorm because of how good Jet Black Sandstorm can be. And that's probably wrong. I think I like yours better, but that's kind of where I was thinking.
So I actually really, really like Jet Black Wings as a counter spell, and I don't know if how common that is in this meta right now, but the threat of Jet Black Wings really stalls out a lot of decks turn 4, especially Lucifer and Brunhilde. And so I don't really know how much use I'd get out of a Sandstorm with my Jet Black, but I guess it's there, unrealistic.
Stephen Holsheiser is challenging your Ruined Earth.
I think Ruined Earth is
Have you cast it? Yeah, it's the best rune besides Rosary.
I want to main that card in every Lucifer deck, and then I want to side 3 more for some freaking inbred that wants to play 2-color decks in a monostone format. I just want to put 4 Ruined Earth in against you and punish you beyond all belief. I absolutely love Ruined Earth.
So, I think we've talked about Lucifer a lot. Let's talk about... It is
the most popular deck in the past 2 events.
In the past 2 events, it has been the most popular. So let's talk about, specifically, I think because she's been through a lot.
Don't you dare say Shayla.
I'm going to talk... No, jeez.
Okay.
Let's talk about Brunhilde. So, Brunhilde has seen... And we can flash back to even here on this chat. Walking into Vegas, we said, Brunhilde, best deck in format. We said that. We said that she was probably the safest choice. She's the most impactful. She's got all this life gain. She's got all this spot removal, all that kind of stuff, right? Since then, Brunhilde has proceeded to do pretty meh, right? So, and come up with a lot of different versions and the idea. She's probably the ruler that has the most discussion about splashing into a different color, specifically because of the white stone that lets you filter into different runes, right? So the kind of ease pressure.
It's not just because of that. It's also because among the this is a subtle thing, but among the rune decks, hers is the best able to operate on her rune deck for multiple turns. So if you go white stone, white stone, white stone, you can easily build a rune deck that plays a functional game off of your white stone, white stone, white stone. And being that safe from your rune deck means you can slant your main deck very heavily to the other color, and you can sort of not necessarily be immune, but be resistant to stone color messing with you, just because your deck sort of, you either can play from your hand or your rune deck in the low games, and then in the medium games or in the high games where you get a decent mix of stones, you're playing from both. And that's something that not all the rune decks can do. Like, I haven't even gotten close to pulling that off with a green rune deck, to be honest.
Right. So, go ahead, Brandon.
One of the disadvantages of having rulers in a game is that we tend to name our decks after the ruler. Like, we call these decks Brunhilde, Lucifer, Hanzo, where if you look at Magic, we have decks like Collected Company, Hardened Scales. Like, we name them after the pivotal card in the deck. So when we talk about the Brunhilde deck, I think that if it was being named under that convention, we'd actually call it the and now I'm suddenly blanking on the name. The 2/4 that draws the card and they play a messenger. We'd call it a Messenger of the Sun deck, because that's really where all of the power in Brunhilde comes from. Is the fact that that deck just overwhelms you in card advantage from that extraordinarily broken card. And so the style that you're talking about isn't really the concern, because the matchup is entirely dependent on how much card advantage matters. So like Brunhilde just destroys these Lucifer decks. It destroys Gil decks if it can get there faster, because your cards really start to matter. And it'll lose against more aggressive decks like Hanzo, or I guess Tempo is a better word, that'll keep your board cleared and kill you before your card advantage really starts to matter. And so when you talk about these color differences, I just don't really see any difference. And that's kind of why I like Mono White Brunhilde better than all the other ones, is because the matchups really don't change between Mono White Brunhilde and the White Green Brunhilde, but the stone consistency is there. So that's why I would always just play Mono White over White Green. I don't know.
Sure.
So it's a long-winded way of saying that, but that was the point.
Yeah, and I think there's credit to that.
What? Brune beats Lucy every time.
Yeah, having played as Lucifer against Brunhilde, based on the build of Brunhilde, I haven't tried the new lists of Lucifer against Brunhilde, but yeah, Brune feels like a lot, because it just always draws so many more cards. We're being argued against, and that's fine for us to be argued against. I haven't tested this format like at all.
Brunhilde beats Lucifer 100% of the time. Quote me on it. I will money match any of you. Lucifer literally cannot be Lifestealing Altar. I do not understand this. I will main deck Lifestealing Altar if I go to Minneapolis. Like,
they don't hear it, Ryan. Ryan,
it's Steven Holsheiser and Derek. These are like control Lucifer players trying to tell me that you beat Brunhilde. Like, you literally never do. It's a 0 to 100 matchup. I have literally said this for like 6 months now. Like 6 months now I've been saying this. And like, I have been challenged on this so many times. Like, Joey Schilling was the first one that was like, we'll beat Brunhilde with Lucifer. Wasn't even close. I played the Brunhilde deck at Vegas. I played against 2 Lucifers. Wasn't even close. I've played it like it's just not even a moderately close matchup. But people, for some reason, still to this day insist that Lucifer wins.
So it's like, I also this is even going further back because I didn't happen to run into Lucifer in Vegas, but I back at the previous Minnesota, I played Brunhilde against Lucifer, and this was before we had Messenger, and it didn't feel close. Like the games where I happened to not draw any of my sideboarded altars felt like they were fighting from behind but had a shot, and if I drew a single altar, it was like, oh, game's over.
I feel like people that think that Lucifer beats Brunhilde just have never laid eyes on Air and Orphica together and then put them together.
I have an update from the chat. Steven Holsheiser and Derek both say, I will say I have never seen an altar in Brune. Me neither. So there you go. Sure.
So do you guys, when I say Brune, what deck list are you guys thinking of?
I know Holsheiser, I was on Rogues Guild, and that is between Jonathan Ball and Josh Patton. That's where the aggro version came from. So that is less resonator.
Sure.
I will also say that version specifically sacrifices some of what makes the deck good against decks like Lucifer.
I think it might be newer tech. Look at the deck me and my brother topped in Vegas. That's the best Brunhilde. It still is, and it played 3 altars in the sideboard.
I think that if you're gonna play Brunhilde, it would be useful to main deck Lifestealing Altar, because I said, my personal opinion is that the top 3 decks are gonna be Gil, Lucifer, Keurig. So it's not very useful against Keurig, but because you're Brunhilde, you already have a very good Keurig matchup. So then when you're spiking for the Gil and the Lucifer, Lifestealing Altar is a broken card. So I would play 2 to 3. The downside is if you come against other Brunhildes and they're playing Messenger and they kill your altars, but I don't even think that's bad, because then you're just killing their messengers. So that's kind
I don't think Brunhilde's going to be popular enough to care about that.
No, we're talking about it now. It's going to be popular, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So if I thought that Brunhilde was going to be populous enough that you had to worry about the mirror, that would be honestly my number one reason to suggest against Brunhilde, because one of the secret issues the deck has is just that if you ever run into the mirror, the odds of you completing the round are so low. Like, you're lucky if you finish game 1.
We've seen Gil win 3 events, all right? You're allowed to play Brunhilde, guys.
There you go.
I want to go ahead and transition us here at this point in time to talking about the Master Runes. We have seen 4 of the 5.
I've only paid attention to 1 of them.
We've seen 4 of the 5. So we're going to talk about the one that's going to have the most discussion last.
Excellent.
So
last. Oh.
So
let's talk about Chimimis.
No, we're not talking about Chimimis first.
No, we're talking about the best one last, though. So why can't we start with Chimimi?
There you go.
I'm talking about Loki's last. What are you talking about? Loki's Master is the most format defining.
We're going to start with Isis's.
That's fine. It's not a card.
Okay.
It's a playable card.
So this is Spiral of Chaos, Divinity 2, 2 red and 3. You pay 3 void less to play it if your ruler is Isis. Card deals 1,000 damage to a resonator, and then it essentially has like pseudo pierce. If this card would deal more damage to that resonator than its defense, this card deals the rest to that resonator's controller. I really like this for Isis personally. I think this was actually something that Isis kind of needed to even enter the realm of being playable.
Yeah, I'm glad that they're pushing more of a control Isis. That's how I always wanted to play her anyway. And so this slides right nicely into that deck. So if that deck ever gets good...
I think it combats really well with it, especially when you consider, Magician of Molding has been something that's been toyed around a lot. So then you're suddenly, not only are you removing a thing off the board, allowing you to get to that end game control game, you're also helping chip your opponent's life away in the process. Even if, someone pointed out to me, like, think about the amount of damage this is doing, right? So say I have a 2-drop 6/6, right? So I'm spending 2 will to kill this thing, and then I'm dealing 4 damage to my opponent. So I'm spending 1 card to kill 1 card and hit my opponent for 4 damage. If you consider the fact that we also have an instant speed 1-drop that deals 500 damage to something and 400 damage to your opponent, if we're Keurig, right? So like, in my mind, this is really nice because it also scales up. So, like, sure, I might not be hitting my opponent for as much damage, but this big body that I needed to be able to deal with is now gone. Like, being able to hit something that has 7 defense, 8 defense, and getting that nice little chip extra, I think is really nice.
I would point out, we spend a good amount of the beginning of this podcast talking about, like, oh man, what if we play this, like, common or uncommon that's just a 2-mana kill something that's a 2-drop or 3-drop for our control decks? And we're like, Ryan's like, what if I spiked my Rune Deck to have another 2-mana kill spell in it? Like, we've been talking about the desire to just make sure you have something that kills stuff. This functionally kills most things all the way up to, like, I'm trying to think of 4-drops that survive this. Like, this kills a lot.
It kills a lot.
The fact that it does damage is just like a bonus. Like, in all honesty, the less damage you're doing to the opponent, the better, because this card is just bonus burn spell. So the less burn you're doing, the more important the thing you killed was.
All right, so here's the problem, though. Quick cast is one hell of a keyword.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And it's not on here, and which isn't to dissuade from playing it. I think the card is still very good, but when we're talking about like adding kill spells to a deck, not having quick cast is a pretty big poo poo on this card. So
yeah, for sure.
There's definitely a world where I look at this card and I say, wow, I actually just want to take the Lucifer deck and then make it an Isis deck and just play 4 black red stones and have that be my activator. The problem here is that this card is going to be double red even if you are Isis. And honestly, if it was red and 1, I would actually just play red black Isis instead of Lucifer potentially, just because you are taking this aggro deck, and now instead of having the Black Rosario where you kill 2 guys, you just have kill guy plus burn plus punch you with my guy. Like, that seems really, really powerful. But like the double red in trying to play a black deck just seems like a little bit too much.
Can we just say that you have got to be the most multicolor stone afraid person I've ever heard of? Because you're like, the other ones I at least understand where you're coming from, but you're like, I can't play a black red multicolor deck. You have the only dual stone in the format. You can run a 6/8 split on your stone.
Oh,
and it's
God, you're the grossest.
It's also a bad side when you're on Isis, and so like that, like Because when you flip Isis, you really want to spend all of your mana every turn, and so the
I wouldn't
punish on
even
this.
flip Isis in that deck. I would just play the
You're
black
playing the rune.
yeah, and just play like this. I would have Explosion, which is pretty cool. I think that's pretty good in an aggro deck. Maybe.
So I've been
even
thinking
Isis
about the
Master
control. The control Isis that doesn't want to flip Isis and gets to play the dual stone gets to play the ancient rune, stands beneath the runes or whatever.
Rune.
Card's really good as a win con.
Yeah,
So-
that's a nice slow win.
Now we're going to talk about the weirdest Master Rune, which is Adam's Master Rune. They did my
Yeah.
boy so wrong with this Master Rune.
don't even
So
know
this
what
is Traveler in the Sea of Clouds. It's 1 white and 3, Divinity 2. You may pay 3 less to play this card if your J Ruler is Adam. So it's a 1-drop white. And then it has an awakening of 2 yellow and 2. You look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal any number of resonators with different costs from among them, put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in random order. If you awaken it, so therefore this becomes a 5 cost, you may put them into the field instead. So I'm not completely opposed to this card for the sake of allowing Adam to have some card draw. The awakening is so much for this card. And the fact that it specifically has to hit different costed resonators. Like, don't get me wrong, huge potential for this card to be an absolute blowout of a cast, if but we need to see white have significantly more deck manipulation, and arguably we haven't seen a lot of spoilers for white, but like we need to have white see some deck manipulation before me to think about this card even being remotely viable.
So if white gets deck manipulation, I'm just gonna play Mystery Box. Like, I mean,
Yeah. So the other thing is that Adam also gets to play Messenger of the Sun, and this is a 1 white rune. So we can have an Adam deck that plays 4 Messenger, a bunch of really cheap runes, and then like a couple of these in the main deck. And then you are just going to drown your opponent in card advantage. The problem is, like, what do you do with all that? And I'm talking about this as like the 1 white potentially draw 3 version, which I actually think might be better than the Awakened version. But
I agree with that. My problem is that you said you want to play this Messenger of the Sun deck, which implies that you're going to be playing runes, but this card can only draw resonators. So it's like...
Well, so we also get our rune deck.
Yeah, but then we're not like... We want to play as many runes in the main deck as possible to get as much value off of Messenger as possible. So
you can still get
Book of Specters in Hearthstone. Like you play 2 Book of Specters in your entire deck. The first one always hits the second one. So I mean, like this card's like always going to hit. Like not.
So I expect this. So if this is just 1 white draw 2, that's still good though, right? You'd just play that as a card.
Sorcery Speed. Like,
1 white draw 2, that's playable. You'd play that.
Yeah.
The amount of card advantage you just gain from that is insane.
So,
but
my problem with this card is
the question is, what do you do with it?
The draw card mode is fine because it's cheap, and we've seen that 1 mana white draw cards works in the current format because the printed mess, like especially for how much extra cost it had. Awakening should have given it quick cast. Like I feel like that's done.
Oh no, is my internet bugging out?
It's either yours or mine.
I'm checking everybody to make sure my stream didn't just cut out.
Nope, that's you asking.
I think we're back. We're good.
Okay, little blip. Sorry, my internet's been acting buggy lately. Yeah, Frank, I can totally agree with you on the idea of if it was Awakened, it would also have Quick Cast. Arguably, they're probably arguing that because Adam, when he flips, gives all of the runes from the rune.
I guess I forget that he already does that.
But it's only runes from the Rune Deck.
Is it? That's terrible. Oh my god! Like
yeah, it doesn't give all runes Quick Cast. It only gives runes from the Rune Deck.
This is what I get for never having Judgment in an Adam in my life. To be honest with you.
Is 1 mana build my entire deck so that I can play 1 mana draw 2 better than 1 mana exile target resonator?
How much do you have to build your deck? So like if we're playing Adam and we're playing like the